Hi, I'm Katie Johnson, and welcome back to another video in a series on stepping up layouts. This is a little book I keep. It's just a photo album that you can get at the dollar store. It's intended for 4x6 photos, but it works well to handle our, in the US, in inches, 4¼ by 5½ inch size piece of paper. And what I typically do, I'm going to do things a little differently today, but what I typically do will say, here is a simple layout. A band, a highlight band of some sort, a focal point and a sentiment, and then say, what can we do to step it up? What can we do to add some extra layers? So we're going to do something very similar today. I'm actually going to make 2 cards and I'm going to step them up 2 different ways. We're going to step them up with layers and we're going to step them up with texture. I'm going to use this stamp set today. This is called Foliage. It has 3 different floral stamps. Well, this one's just sort of a foliage stamp. It does have some sentiments and it has this background element stamp as well. And this is a red rubber set. The nice thing about this, because we're going to be doing some layering, is that it does come with a matching set of dies. Now you'll notice on here that 2 of the dies are actually framelits. So we've got one right here. Well, here I can show it to you because I've already got them die cut. That will make it easier to see. So these are some of them. I actually have another sheet over there with a few more of the die cuts. Couldn't fit them all on one piece of paper because there are so many. But what you see on here is 2 framelits that are going to let you die cut this image right here and this image right here. There's no die cut for that one. In addition to these 2 framelits, there's also 5 different leaves. So 2 that look like this pointing in opposite directions. 2 that look like this, pointing in opposite directions, and then 1 that is a pair of leaves together. There's also this beautiful big foliage spray, and in addition to that, there are 2 more, which I'm going to show you in just a moment, die cut on the other card, and these are actually the ones I'm going to play with today. But before I put this away, I just have to point out one thing. I didn't mention these 2 little guys down here because they are not dies. They're just sort of a bonus. They come out of the middle of these leaves. So when you guys get a stamp set or a die set like this, pay attention to the discard pieces because sometimes those little discard pieces could be very useful. In fact, looking at those, I'm thinking of punch art and I'm thinking of reindeer antlers. Just a thought. So cute little reindeer antler options. The other thing is, don't just think of the obvious. I mean, there's flowers over here, so you're thinking flowers, but you know, what do these shapes suggest to you? These kind of suggested underwater seaweed scene, and I used it on this little turtle card down here. So we got this little guy, we got these, makes a nice background coral reef image as well. So I have another stamp set that I'm going to show you here. You know, sometimes when you get a stamp set like Thoughtful Wishes, and it does have sentiments in it, you feel constrained by the sentiments that are in here. This is mostly a thank you set, or I appreciate you, you make life better. There is this missing you, but it doesn't say what I wanted to say on today's card. So I'm turning to another stamp set. I think everybody needs just a good generic greeting stamp set that can fill in those missing pieces when there's something specific you want to say that isn't part of the floral images you plan to use. So check out this. I love this for several reasons. First of all, this particular stamp set, if you're looking for a good sentiment set, this one has almost everything. We have anniversary, love you, thank you, hello, friend, birthday, best wishes, birthday wishes. You can pair up the sentiments, congratulations, thinking of you. Where there's heartache, let there be healing. It could work as sympathy. And this set has them in both script and block letters. Also has a couple of other little ones down here. On your birthday, on your anniversary, sending, wishes. So there's a lot of different reasons that this stamp set is very versatile. I'm loving the everyday greetings set. I'm going to use the hello from this stamp set on today's project. Just a quick comment for people who might be new and watching this. I mentioned that the Thoughtful Wishes stamp set was red rubber. So that means that it is opaque when it fits to my block. The everyday greeting set is photopolymer, which is nice because when you've got a sentiment like this, you really want exact placement of your images. And so you're able to see through it as you're stamping. All right, let's talk about the basic layout that we're going to start with, and then we will definitely step it up. This is the big floral image, and one option for a very simple design would be to put your focal point off on the left, add your quick sentiment down here, and when you're in a hurry and that's all you want to say, this works just fine for a card front. This particular stamp set would allow you to come in and do a little bit of coloring. If you wanted to bring a marker in, I stamped it on an extra piece of paper because sometimes just to add some interest, you want that extra layer to just kind of set off your focal point. You could come in and put a bow on here. You could add some bling, and clearly that's not what I'm going to do today because I do have this other piece of paper sitting over here. And these are the other dies that I didn't show you from the die set. There is one I mentioned that cuts a flower that kind of coordinates with the image that was in the stamp set. So this is the stamped image and this is the die that coordinates with it. And then there are these two dies that I mentioned and kind of pointed to, but I didn't show you what they look like when they're die cut. This one is not the framelit. It's a separate coordinating die. So in other words, here's the framelit. This is the framelit that would die cut the stamped image. This is a coordinating die, and there are two of them in the die set. Now look at them closely because you're going to see something fun, and that's where we're going with today's project. They look almost the same, right? The difference is that this one has flower heads on it and this one doesn't. This is the one that I used on my underwater scene to kind of be like a coral or something underwater. This one would fit more with a garden project, but here is the fun thing that you can do. This piece right here is an exact match for the other one. So check out the look. Isn't that awesome? You can layer them and come up with something fun like this. You can see on here that I glued the green piece on top of a pink base. There's my pink base. There's my green piece glued on top. Isn't that awesome? So much fun. Here's an alternate idea. Take a green base and cut off the flower heads and glue them on to the green base. So you have two different ways that you can take these two dies in the stamp set and combine them to get a multicolored, a two-tone look to the finished die cut piece that you're going to add to your project. Once again, this one is the pink base, and I glued the green on top. This one is the green base, and I cut off the flower heads and put them on. Okay, let's make some projects. You saw me do the stamping on here. Let's just flip this over and use the die cuts instead of the stamped piece. So here is my pink base with the green glued on top of it. And I could stamp my sentiment, but I've already stamped it onto another piece of paper and highlighted it with a black piece just to kind of set it off. And that looks kind of pretty, but it also looks a little bit plain. So I've die cut another one out of a different color green for highlighting. And I'm going to, ooh, check out that. We're stepping it up with layers today, right? And then we're going to add a little bit of a bow. So let me go ahead and finish putting this together. That looks pretty good, right? But I said we're going to step it up, not just with layers, but also with texture. This is the painted texture embossing folder. There's nothing where anybody has to look at it and try and figure out what the image is. It's just some generic images. So I've got a piece that's already texture embossed, ready to go here. And this really will make a difference to have that extra little texture in the background, but also it's not set off from the background very well. So I'm going to add this little extra piece behind it just to set it off. And now this card is ready to assemble. At this point, you're going to see me use the tape for the big pieces, but then I come in with the liquid glue for the really tiny die cut pieces. And the nozzle is kind of big, so I had actually transferred some of the liquid glue to an applicator I purchased online. So the reason that I'm adding a bow to this is just because I think this looks very unfinished. And there are lots of different choices for ribbons that would be available, but I decided to just use this white twine because I think it doesn't compete with the prettiness of the flowers and the sentiment. It just sort of blends in. It's organic. It's just a natural fit. And this white twine came from this Baker's Twine Essentials pack. I had several different choices on color here. This is more of a linen craft color. Vanilla. the black and the white. So what do you think? A very pretty card with lots of layers and lots of texture. All right, we made this one vertical. Let's make a horizontal version. All right, we just made a vertical version. Let's make a horizontal version so that we get an opportunity to use this pretty die cut right here. I'm going to make one simple card, and then we're going to make this one actually a second time with a few more layers and texture on it. So let's start out with something fairly simple. So I've applied glue to the back of this, and I'm going to layer this on the front of the card base right here. And I'm going to bring this piece in just to hold it while it dries. And then I can talk to you real quickly about the glue. This is the glue that I used. It's a multi-purpose liquid glue. It dries pretty quickly, and it's a very strong hold. The applicator tip on here is a little wider than what's convenient for this narrow die. And so I have transferred some of this glue into this container, which I got off the internet, and I like it because it's got this really tiny little applicator tip on the end. This is ready to add my other parts to it. And I'm just adding this onto the card base itself because we're going to make a second card that's a little bit more layered up. Right here are a bunch of foliage pieces that were die cut ahead of time, and that's all I'm going to use on this simple card. So I'm just going to layer 2 or 3 of them in the middle here. Before I glue this on, I want to point out 2 things. There is a curve to this floral spray. And by the way, it would look lovely on a vertical card. On this card, I have it slightly curving up, and on the next card, I'm going to reverse it and have it curving down. The die cut pieces that I'm using here are the ones that don't have any floral heads on them. So guys, these dies make really pretty backgrounds to highlight a sentiment. And here is my sentiment. I stamped it on a big piece for the card on the right, and then layered it with a black highlighting layer. Here, I just fussy cut it. I just used my scissors and fussy cut it. I am going to put this one up on dimensionals. I'm using dimensionals on here because there's a lot of visual depth on this project, but there's also a lot of structural depth. And so putting this up on dimensionals is really going to be useful for making sure my sentiment doesn't fall off. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So there is a simple card that just shows with lots of layering the beauty of these die cuts. Now, let's add a few more layers to this as well. Okay, we are almost ready to make our third and final card, which is going to have lots of layers and texture on it. But I thought we should have a quick conversation about colors before we go on, because I've been using a variety of pinks and greens. So the 2 pinks that I've been using are Fresh Freesia and Petunia Pop. And you see the Petunia Pop on these 2, and I've got a Fresh Freesia piece over there, which is going to get used on the next project. So 2 pinks. And then I've used 3 different greens. I used the Mossy Meadow as the dark green, and then I used Old Olive as a highlight behind it. And on this one, the big floral spray that's going across the bottom down here, this was Soft Seafoam. Okay, so we got our 3 greens and our 2 pinks. I will pull these back in when we get our third project made, but let's bring in the pieces for our third one. Ooh, this is going to be so awesome down here. Just like on that first one, I've got a background piece that is texture highlighted with that painted textures embossing folder. And I'm going to highlight this one on a piece of the soft sea foam. Again, love this glue. It dries pretty quick and it's very strong. And I mentioned before, I just put it in this small applicator bottle with a nice little applicator tip for gluing on these small pieces. Got lots of layers here, and I'm going to probably speed through all of this, but I will just show you real quickly how it's going to get laid out. I have lots of parts down here. On the previous project, I took this piece, which has a little bit of a curve to it, and I curved it up. On this one, we're going to curve it down. We're going to use these 2 that don't have the flower heads as extra background layers. These 2 pieces will go off to the side, and the one with the lighter color will go in the middle. So once you get to these top layers, one concern is having the glue make a good enough bond between the piece you're putting on and what it's being layered on top of. But an advantage right now to the one I'm adding, which helps with the gluing, is the fact that this one has the flower heads. Remember that one below didn't have any flower heads. So I only had the surface of those little leaves and the surface of the stem. This one has the surface of the flower heads as well to help with the adhesion. This piece is going to go then in the middle. We are ready to add the sentiment to this piece. On the first one, I layered it up on just a strip of paper and cut a little banner end. On this one, I actually just fussy cut the sentiment and layered it on there. Here, there's so much going on. I was afraid it wouldn't stand out very well, so I did put it on a, not just fussy cut the image, but also layered it on a fussy cut background piece. And this will also get layered up on dimensionals. And again, because there's so much structural depth below it. Now it's going to sit on top of all these stems. So I'm going to put my dimensionals out to the side to kind of straddle that depth that's in the middle from the stems. So I'm leaving a space for all of the stems. So here are the projects that we made today. That first one, the second one with all the layers, and then the one really layered up with all the extra texture. So if you liked what you saw today and you want to make sure that you see future videos from me, if you're watching on YouTube, then make sure that you subscribe to my channel and ring that little bell to turn on notifications so you'll get notified when I come on with future videos. Now, I am a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I will put links to all the product that I used in the description. But a real quick reminder, I used the Thoughtful Wishes bundle. It's got the stamp set, it's got the die set, lots and lots of dies here. Only 2 of them are framelits. The rest of them are just structural pieces that you could use to add lots of different layers. By the way, let me know what you think of this idea of cutting off the flowers and adding them to the other piece. And then, of course, we added even more structural interest by using the Painted Textures embossing folder. And please feel empowered to pull in your own favorite sentiment set if the ones that are in the stamp set you're using aren't quite right for what you want to say. This one, by the way, is a great one. And also feel empowered to use the dies in a way that maybe wasn't their original intention. Hey, I come on every Monday with more ideas like this. So again, make sure that you subscribe or follow my page so that you get notifications. Hey, we'll catch you next Monday. Bye-bye. I'm Katie Johnson.